Today, we're going to be taking a look at the burliest, the brawniest, and sadly, probably the hairiest character in Disney's Sorcerer Arena Epic Alliance's core set, Gaston. He hits like a truck, and we're going to be talking about how to make sure that the truck keeps driving down the road and really puts on the damage to your rival's team. Let's go ahead and dive into some strategy. Gaston isn't too bright. He's the only character in the core set with a hand size of 1. So this is going to mean that your typical hand size with Gaston on your team is going to range around 5. You'll need to be a little more conservative with how you use your cards while having Gaston on your team, as burning through more cards means you're going to get down to fewer cards in hand, which means you have less thoughtful decisions to make. His skill Boast grants him 1 strong if he reveals an attack card from the top of your deck. If it's not an attack card, Gaston takes 1 damage instead. Usually when you attack with any character with a standard attack, you would need to basically discard an attack card to boost the attack by 1, going around 3 damage. But with Boast, this makes it so Gaston's base attack would be 3 because he would gain the strong, increasing it by 1. You also could still boost this as well, making it 4 damage from just a standard attack. This also means that all of Gaston's cards that would deal damage would also be increased by 1 for this turn, since it's only 1 strong. So Gaston can really hit hard when he gains that extra strong from the skill. One thing to note while you're building your team, make sure that your team has plenty of attack cards. Any card revealed from the top of the deck must show that attack symbol. So if a character on your team isn't filled with a lot of attack cards, it's going to be more likely that Gaston's going to take a damage from Boast rather than actually gain the strong. Luckily, if you do fail the Boast though, Gaston is large as a barge. He's got 10 HP, second highest in the core set next to Sully. So you can whiff on a few of these and still be okay. Gaston's cards are pretty straightforward. He's not very bright, so he uses his fist to do most of the talking. Gaston's offense focuses heavily on having him next to only 1 rival and no other allies or rivals in general. One of the cards that helps with this is Shove. It allows you to deal 3 damage to a rival, then move that rival up to 2 spaces away. This is really good to set up for future turns or to help disrupt the positioning of your opponent so that way Gaston can go in and wail on them in a future round. Let's Dance is also helpful as it allows Gaston to move an adjacent rival 1 space. Then he can move afterwards. You can use this to separate that character away from the crowd so Gaston can set up for his heavy-hitting attacks. Keep in mind, too, that this is any character, so Gaston, in theory, could use this to move an ally that is adjacent to him, possibly setting up for their future turn. Brawler, his signature attack card, deals a whopping of 4 damage. And keep in mind, too, this is not with strong or by discarding card to boost it. This card just deals 4 raw damage. On top of that, too, if the rival that is damaged this way is not adjacent to any other of your rivals, the opponent must then choose and banish a card from their hand. This really helps out because, as we know, Gaston isn't very bright. Gaston has 2 really unique attack cards that combo really well together. Fury deals only 1 damage, but it gives you the option afterwards to take an additional movement phase or an additional action phase. Keep in mind too with Fury that if you have Strong, instead of 1 damage, it's 2 damage. So that can set up for some pretty sweet things that you can do, like right after playing Fury, play Sheer Bravado. Probably Gaston's best card in his deck, but requires a little bit of setup. By default, the card will deal 4 damage, similar to Brawler. But if Gaston and the rival he's damaging are not adjacent to any other characters, it deals 6 damage, aka 7 if you have Strong. So if you play Fury with Strong dealing 2 damage, and then Sheer Bravado for 7 damage, that is a total of 9 damage. That can knock out every character in the core set minus Gaston himself and Sully in 1 single turn. So keep that in mind when you're trying to really finish off a character that could possibly win you the game. While Gaston can deal some serious damage, he does need to move around to do so he can position himself against rivals when they're not adjacent to their fellow teammates or when you're not adjacent to your teammates. If Gaston gets stuck, aka immobilized from the immobilized effect, he has a really hard time trying to make sure he can do what he needs to do to help your team be successful in the damage department. Luckily, he has a card called Shrug It Off. It is a movement card that allows you to remove all status effects from Gaston, and then you can move. This is really helpful when you have that wonderful play that you want to do and you're immobilized. So you can just remove the immobilized, move Gaston, and then go in and do some sheer bravado or fury shenanigans. Now, let's go over a pretty fancy turn with Gaston. It's not going to be as fancy as Aladdin because Gaston really just punches really hard, but we're going to set up an example where Gaston's in a pretty tricky spot and we can actually make that tricky spot turn into an incredible turn. Gaston is currently adjacent to Maleficent, one of his rivals. Sully is one space away from Gaston and is taunted. Gaston currently is immobilized. Gaston really wants to try to knock out Sully because 1, he's taunted. 2, Sully also has only 8 health. This could possibly win Gaston's team the game right here as Sully is 7 VP. Gaston can't move because he's immobilized. So he's in a pretty tough situation because he can't even hit Maleficent with any of his really good cards in hand. To get him out of this tough spot, he's going to play Shrug It Off, removing the immobilized and then moving adjacent to Sully. Now him and Sully are not adjacent to any other characters. Before Gaston plays any attack cards, he's going to attempt to boast. He's going to reveal an attack card that actually belongs to one of his allies. Regardless, he still gains the 1 strong, so all of his attacks he plays for the rest of this turn are increased by 1 damage. Gaston starts off by playing Fury, and with strong, it's going to deal 2 damage instead of 1. And he gains a bonus action phase, or movement phase technically. We're going to choose to do the action phase and play sheer bravado. And since Gaston and Sully are not adjacent to any other characters, it's going to deal 7 damage as it's increased by 1 from the strong. That is 9 total damage that was dealt this turn to Sully, knocking him out, giving Gaston's team 7 points. Gaston's a pretty straightforward, heavy-hitting character, but he's got a few little nice nuances that make him very interesting to play, so that way when you're going about trying to deal as much damage as possible, you can do it in the most effective way. I hope you've enjoyed this strategy guide right here, and I hope you folks look forward to watching more in the future. Stay tuned, and I'll see you folks next time.